Now for your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you, Mr. Chairman, and Ranking Member Wicker having this hearing and leading off with a very ambitious agenda for the Communications Subcommittee, and particularly focusing on rural areas, which you know is very important to me. And I'm interested not only in deployment in rural areas, but also adoption, and trying to do more to get people to adopt broadband services in rural areas, and that's something that I've got an opening statement which I address, and I'd like to have included for the record, if I might, Mr. Chairman. But if I could just ask a quick question and have you react to it, if you would. For those of you who compete head-to-head with other providers of voice, video, and Internet services, do you feel that you're competing on an even regulatory playing field with your competitors? And if not, could you identify what you believe are the main regulatory disparities? Anybody want to take? Feel free. Mr. Carlson.
Thank you very much. I will speak to the wireless area, and one of the key areas that we feel there's not a level playing field today is the 700 megahertz and the issue of the lower 700 megahertz band interoperability. We, like many mid-size and smaller carriers, went into the auction 3 years ago, acquired licenses on the A block, only to find after the auction that one of the two largest companies in the nation changed the way the frequency allocations were aggregated to effectively exclude the A block from their handsets. As a result of that, many manufacturers will not produce handsets that include the lower 700 megahertz A block, which means that our handset selection at U.S. Cellular is not as extensive as other carriers. In fact, some of the most popular handsets in America we cannot get access to for our newly launched LTE broadband network on 700 megahertz. We can't get access to that. So that's a lack of consumer choice that was created because the FCC did not require interoperability across the lower 700 megahertz band. That's very, very important to correct. The FCC, to their credit, has a proceeding in front of them to correct that. We would hope that as soon as the new leadership of the Commission is settled, that they will get that across the finish line, and we would ask for your help in doing that.
Anything else?
Senator, as an incumbent telephone company, we are subject to substantial regulations regarding the provision of service, obligations to serve, unbundling of our network. So there are a number of obligations that are imposed on incumbent telephone companies that don't apply to cable or don't apply to wireless. And so the regulatory field is not level. It has different bumps and bruises, but it's not level. The one thing I would also just mention very briefly about adoption, which you raised, is that we find that when we bring broadband to a community, there is a great need for it and a great desire for it. And so adoption does occur very rapidly across a very broad base. We also offer a discounted $9.95 broadband offer for low-income customers. So we're trying to do things to address adoption through various communications, but as well as looking at lower-income customers and deciding if there's something we can do there.
If I may.
Go ahead, yeah.
Not necessarily in areas where we're competing, but just that the regulatory burden on small companies, particularly companies like ours and smaller than ours, the regulatory burden is very heavy. You know, the company I work for, we're fortunate. We're actually large in the realm of some small companies, but I can tell you that the regulatory burden is difficult for us to comply with. It takes a great deal of my time and our staff trying to comply with the reports that are required of us, both as incumbent telephone provider and as a cable and broadband provider. And for smaller companies, I can't imagine how they are able to keep up. I know it's a terrible challenge for them. On adoption, we have engaged in making some promotional offerings. A couple of schools in the areas we serve got grants to provide children in 1 grade laptop computers. We offered a promotional broadband offering to those students families so that they could make complete use of those computers. We have worked with community organizations trying to provide internet education, broadband education classes for adults. A common problem is their children know more about the internet than they do, and they're concerned about the things that are out there in the world. They want to keep their children safe, and we've tried to develop some programs to help educate them so they can engage in monitoring their children's usage and being able to have some comfort that their children are safe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank all of you for your input and perspective.
Thank you.